gotten so far. So we are taking testimonies before we start, okay? We already opened in prayer, right?
I don't believe so.
Okay, let's take some testimonies. Anybody can give a testimony regarding what you have received so far. What have changed? Any comment so far? You know. Okay, maybe Susie, maybe you should call names because looks like these people are sleeping on us.
Okay, I didn't want to do this, guys. But
I know. Come on.
Okay, QJ's raising her hand. Praise God for your life, QJ.
Okay.
So for me, I was actually at she's like my grand aunt's house. I was with her yesterday. And we were talking just about a whole lot of stuff, but we ended up talking about like marriage and relationships and all of that. And she was telling me just about some of the ways that she thought when she was younger. And just the way that she like approached relationships and all of that. And I was really realized, and she was talking about like how much later in life she kind of got a lot wiser about that. And for me, I just realized that like I'm in such a blessed position to like have the community that I have in you all, where we're kind of talking about these things and giving, young youth and young adults the tools to already be thinking wisely about some of the really big decisions that we're going to have to make soon for some of us and later in life for others of us. But it just really, really made me think that like, wow, like some of the things that she was saying about how she thought when she was like my age, I was just like, that's so crazy because I just realized that there's so much wisdom and like knowledge and just biblical perspective that's really being imparted upon us. And yeah, I'm just really grateful for that. And that's my testimony.
Amen. Thank you for sharing. Testimonies are so powerful in the sense that every time they come with power, and that power to empower somebody who is hearing what is being said. So if you have not done so yet, please go ahead and invite your friends. I see we are 21 participants, which include the leaders. And a lot of your friends are not here. And I'm not understanding why when you are here. How can you be here without your friends? I mean, it should literally be a habit. Okay, good. I see somebody coming in. But go ahead and invite your friends, please. We are still taking testimonies before we start the session tonight. Tonight, we are still we are talking about education, career choice, and ministry. And today we have a powerful guest speaker who is coming very soon. But we are taking testimonies. Anyone else wants to share? Hello? Nobody has a testimony or comment?
I know this past weekend, not this past Saturday, we went and did some evangelism with A and SC and Jalen and Harold and Ryan and Dr. Patricia, Elder Charlotte, Bernice. Who else? Am I missing anybody else, y'all? It was such a powerful time. It was really encouraging that we were able to go out and pass out. I think, I don't know how many of you guys passed out. But I think I can literally say I passed up maybe 30 or 40, flyers that day or evangelism cards that day. But what stood out to me during the entire process was the fact that so many people were open to hear, to receive, and, beyond the fact that, sometimes it feels like a duty to some. I think it's just a great opportunity that God is willing to use people like us who, even though we're not quote unquote perfect, we don't have it all together. We may not even know all of the scriptures, and when the reality is God is willing to use us still. And we have 5 salvations, I believe. I had an opportunity to meet a gentleman named Keon, who this is his testimony I'm getting ready to share. I think you guys, SE, QJ, y'all recall the story, but Keon, I think a day or two prior to us meeting him on Saturday, went to go and buy some weed. And while standing there buying the weed, he heard
Hi,
his friend.
Mrs. DeLong. Is it for me to go ahead and talk, or are we waiting?
Who that? No, doctor, not yet. We're giving testimony.
Oh, hold on. I can't hear you. Hello?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I can hear you now. Sorry, I think I was on
Oh, we
mute.
are going to introduce you properly, Doctor.
Okay, so I couldn't hear anything when I logged in because my computer
Oh,
was
sorry.
off. Sorry.
Mhm.
No worry, doctor. Thank you. Keon's story was Keon is getting ready to buy a bag of weed, and he hears another guy say, "No, not here. Don't do it here." Long story short, while he's buying this $10 bag of drugs, the guys who he was buying it from were getting ready to murder him. And he's, of course, we meet him at Glenmont Station. We're talking, and he's belligerent. I mean, he's drunk. He's over there talking, but he's able to pause in that moment and allow Dr. Pat to pray with him. I prayed with him, and he kept saying, "Man, it was God, yo. It was God. It was God. It was God." I mean, he recognized God's goodness in that situation. So I guess I'm saying that to say, never take for granted your testimony. 1, 2, God's ability to use you to be a blessing to somebody, right? Now, we were able to sow seeds of hope, seeds of love, seeds of life in Keon's heart. And my prayer is that Keon at some point will come to his senses and receive the love of Christ. We also, I was shooting a music video for Harold in jail, and we met another lady who was sitting at the bus stop right around the corner from where we were at the station. And as we shot the video, she was, she was kind of looking and sizing things up. But at the end of it, she started to ask what the song was about. And, lo and behold, this lady ends up being prayed for as well. She was like, "I'm so sorry." She had a can of beer. "I'm so sorry, but she was so open to be prayed for and began to express her struggles with alcohol, 30 years alcoholism, struggling, battling all of this stuff, emotional issues. And she said, "Look, I'm coming to your church. I'm bringing my daughter." You never know. You never know how God can use you, I guess is what I'm saying. So, what it's saying is, so allow your testimony of Christ to be light to someone who's living in extreme darkness.
Amen. Powerful.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pastor Folani, for sharing that. I mean, evangelism is key. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but every time we have sessions, like opportunities for us, for the believer to go and evangelize, use that opportunity. You never know how God is going to use you, how God going to use you in the field. I have a testimony too. I almost forgot, but I think I'm going to share that testimony. I had a vision about a lady. She's not even here. She's in Cameroon. So I had a vision about her, and she was bleeding. And I was asking myself, but why is she bleeding? In the vision, asking, but why is she bleeding? She should not be bleeding. I know she has 2 kids, and 2 kids. The younger one is like a year old, and in the vision, I was asking, so is she just having her period or what? And it's like you're seeing somebody bleeding, and there's someone else answering to the questions that you have. And so I'm asking this question, and the person is telling me, no, it's not her period. And I'm like, but why? So I called the lady. First of all, she's surprised why I'm calling her, and I asked, are you okay? How is it going? Well, I texted the lady. I texted and asked, how are you going? She never replied. And then later on, maybe 2 days later, she calls me, and I said, well, I was calling you the other day, asking how you are doing. She's like, well, I've been bleeding for the past how many months? It's not going away. I don't know what to do. I was like, Jesus Christ, what is this? She was like, but where are you? I said, the reason why I was calling you is because I saw you bleeding. So I prayed for her right there on the spot. The following day, she was still bleeding and stuff. But yesterday, she called me and said the bleeding had stopped. So I just want to say that, God is still in the business of performing miracles. He's still using you. I mean, as long as you have the Holy Spirit living inside of you, Jesus Christ living inside of you, he can use you no matter where the person is. He can use you to pray, over somebody who is sick, who has been bleeding for months, to show you that this person, just pray for them and they're going to be healed. With that being said, unless we have another testimony. Any other testimony? Okay, so with that being said, we are going to introduce our speaker tonight. Susie, go ahead.
All right, all right. So praise God for all the testimonies, by the way. It is amazing to hear how God uses his people. And so tonight we want to continue to key into what God is going to share. We want to continue to key into the word of God through his servants. Awesome. Praise God for your life. Lufika said he invited a friend. Do we know? Can we quickly say hi to your friend? Should be Anu. Okay, welcome, Anu. We're glad to have you.
Hi, Anu.
And to anyone else who also invited a friend, feel free to let us know so that we can properly welcome your friend. So welcome, Anu.
I don't know if she's. I sent the link, so just so that you let her in. So.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so tonight we are continuing to talk about career choices in ministry. Last week was amazing, and so tonight I believe it's also going to be amazing. We have Dr. FATMATTA Garami Barlett, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, who is originally from Sierra Leone and has been in the US for the past 20 years or more. She's attended Vanderbilt University for her bachelor's in science, and the University of Virginia for medical school, as well as Johns Hopkins for public health. So I see that she has a lot of experience in pediatrics and currently works in family medicine at Howard University, HU. So she's passionate about serving undeserved communities, and Dr. Barlett is a proud wife and mother who enjoys running, hiking, traveling, and serving the Lord. And so let us really open up our hearts tonight to receive the wealth of knowledge that she has and the wonderful nuggets of wisdom that she's going to share with us. Yeah, let us unmute and say, praise God, welcome, or clap it up. Let us open our hearts and open up our mouths to say, welcome, Dr. FATMATTA. Come on, everyone, can we make some noise, please? Can we make some noise?
Welcome.
Welcome.
You have the floor. There you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for the warm welcome. You guys have me blushing. I really appreciate it. I know you guys probably prayed, but I'm just going to pray really quick before we get started, okay, if that's okay with you guys again. Lord, I just thank you, God, for this time together. God, I pray, Lord, that you will use me, help me and guide me as to what way this conversation will go. I thank you, God, for opening the hearts of the people here online with us tonight, that they may be receptive to this conversation that we're having. And we thank you that ultimately everything leads to your glory, honor, and praise. Amen. Amen. Awesome. So I know I'm supposed to be talking about like career options in line with the ministry, but I also kind of want to get a feel of what you guys want to know, because I don't want to bore you guys and talk. I really want to make this as interactive as possible. I'll just spend a few minutes kind of talking about what I do for a living and how that intersects with my personal beliefs as a Christian, and the platform that it allows to give me, okay? And I'm going to talk in very basic terms. I apologize. I know you guys are very smart people, but I just like to talk in basic terms so everybody kind of understands what I'm saying. Okay. So I am a medical doctor, meaning I take care of sick people. I do family medicine. I work at Howard University Hospital, like Susie said. I have the pleasure of taking care of patients in the clinic. So like you come in, you're like, oh, I have hypertension. I have diarrhea today. I was coughing, whatever it may be. I can take care of you in the clinic. I get to build relationships with people. So I see you, like if you have like a chronic problem, like diabetes, hypertension, I see you on like every few months, depending on how sick you are, maybe more often. And then if you're like a healthy young person, I probably see you like a few times a year, usually for your physicals. And then if you get sick, you come and see me. I also take care of sick people in the hospital as well. So if you have COVID and you're sick enough to be in the hospital, or you can't keep food down, or you have a really bad pneumonia, I take care of people in the hospital as well. And then I also teach. I teach medical students at Howard about just like clinical medicine. And then I also teach like doctors who are in training, residents also at Howard as well. So I kind of get to do all that kind of stuff, which is nice because I get to, I don't know, it's interesting because being a doctor, people trust you. They come to you with like their personal problems that they probably wouldn't tell anything to. I kind of feel like I'm almost like a pastor. Like pastors, people come and tell people, like pastors, their personal problems. People tell me all their personal problems, and which is kind of great. It puts me in a position to help them, right? So to help them from a medical standpoint, but also as we build trust over the years, or even over the months, really, of meeting people, it really allows the doors for sometimes for us to have other conversations, like spiritual conversations, or talking about alcohol. And especially in COVID, I've seen a lot of people drinking a lot more or using substances a lot more. I get to interact with young people who use substances, and it really gives me the platform to really, if you want to call it preaching, you can. I'm a little shy. I wouldn't say it's preaching, but it is. But it's really like my platform to minister to people. And it's awesome because I don't minister as a pastor or whatever. I'm just this young doctor who's talking to them. And so it kind of takes the edge off of feeling like, oh, I'm preaching to you. And we're just really having a conversation. And it allows me to talk about like thought-provoking things so they can be like, oh, really? Or sometimes they bring up God. And it just opens up the platform to us to have a faith-based conversation, okay? So it really allows me to be able to merge my two loves. I love caring for people. And the reason I love caring for people is because I love God. And God wants us to care for people. And we show our love for Christ by caring for the people he made, because God doesn't live here on earth. Like we can't love God because God is physically not here with us, but his people are here. So it's by loving his people that we show our love for God. So I'm saying all of this to say that as you're like trying to figure out, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to do with my life? And trying to determine what that's going to look like. I think it's really important to like step back and say, okay, what is my goal in life? Like for me, my goal in life is to love on people. Okay, how do I get to love on people? Like, what am I good at that I can love on people? I've always naturally been good in math and science. I'm really good with my hands. I like the physical aspect of touch is something really important to me. When I was younger, even now, I build everything. My husband may be a little embarrassed, but I build everything in our house. Even when he can't figure it out, I build everything in my house. And even as a kid, my mom always thought I was gonna be a surgeon because I love to use my hands. So I knew I needed to do something with my hands to show people that I love them. And then I loved math and science, and it just came really easy to me. And so that's how I kind of came to where I am. So I don't really want to talk that much because I know we have a limited amount of time together. So I kind of want to get a sense from you guys, like, what are you guys wanting to learn? Do you guys have specific questions for me? So I don't just keep talking and boring you, and then I can use that platform to kind of talk about more things.
So there are some questions in the chat. Susie, do you want to monitor the chat?
Sure, yeah, I could do that. So one of the first question is, so there are so many career opportunities. At what point of your life did you decide to be a doctor?
Okay, awesome. I love the chat, by the way, because if you're shy, you can text in the chat so that you don't have to like talk in the group if you don't want to. But this is a safe space. So whatever is said here stays here. And so you guys can ask whatever questions you want to ask. And there's no such thing as a stupid question because somebody else is really dying to ask the same question, but they're just as shy as you. So go ahead and ask any questions you want. Okay, so at what point did I decide I want to be a doctor? Man, since I was little. So I grew up in Sierra Leone and I was there during the Civil War. And I remember like everyone is trying to like get out of Sierra Leone, out of Freetown. And all these doctors are coming with the Red Cross. I was like, who are these people? Why are they coming in when people are running out? So actually I wanted to be a trauma doctor. That's why what I always wanted to do for a really long time. I wanted to like, be a trauma surgeon because of that reason. So that's the first time I ever thought of even really thinking. I was 10 of thinking of, oh, I want to be a doctor. And I just held on to that. And then throughout my life, I was just blessed. My pediatrician lived across the street from me. And so she really molded a lot of decisions that I made. I remember when I got to go to Vanderbilt and I got a full scholarship, and my mom, your African parents, and mom was like, oh, Vanderbilt, where is that? It's, I don't even know where Tennessee, where's that? And, she was clearly afraid because she's like, okay, I don't want you to leave the state. You hear horror stories of people's kids going away from college, and bad things happening. But luckily for me, my childhood pediatrician really stood up because she trained at Vanderbilt. And she was like, oh, it's a really good school. You should really let her go. And so I'm really grateful because I don't think my mom would have probably let me go if like she didn't have someone there to be like, no, this is a good school to like provide her reassurance. And when I went to school, a lot of people are pre-med in college, right? And like everybody's pre-med in college. Half the college is pre-med. And then again, I just feel like I was like really blessed. I just like met all the right people. I met my dean of my university was from like the DC area. And my mom actually met him on like my very first day there, became really good friends with him, took his phone number. And he really just checked up on me all throughout college to make sure I stayed out of trouble, to make sure I did my work. And then my mom used to fly down all the time. So sometimes she did surprise visits. I didn't even know she was coming. And so I just I liked math and science, and it was hard, but I just really enjoyed it. And I did well with it by God's grace. And then at one point I said, I'm not going to be a doctor because, you have to rebel a little bit. You have to make your parents sweat just a little bit. And so I said, I'm not going to be a doctor. And my mom was like, oh, why? But I was like, no, I was just like, well, why? I felt like, okay, I always said I wanted to be a doctor since I was 10, but like, why? And I think sometimes it's good. And to kind of link it up, even sometimes with faith, I know sometimes you have to like question your faith. And I know sometimes it may look bad, but I actually think in the end, it's a good thing for you to be like, okay, I have a relationship with Christ because I have a relationship with Christ, right? The same way I want to be a doctor because I want to be a doctor. It's not that I'm just coming to church every day because my parents are telling me to come to church every day. I'm just not doing this because my parents are telling me to do this, but it's good to get a grasp. And so you can have like a personal relationship with Christ. And for me, it really added meaning for me as to why I really want to become a doctor. I had to really make sure it's not because I told my mom when I was 10, I wanted to be a doctor. And now my mom has held on to it. And she's just like trying to support me in this endeavor and just really having a reality check to make sure that's what I really wanted to do. So I like shadowed a doctor one summer and I really loved it. I was really trying to hate it, but I really loved it. I wanted to like really just rebel, but as God will have it, I just really enjoyed it. And then I just kind of went on. It just happened really quickly for me, to be honest with you. I think the road is long. I always tell people wanting to become a medical doctor is not for the faint-hearted. I still remember when I took my MCAT and I didn't do well. All my practice
I
scores were
remember I'm
great.
supposed to it's a waste of Saturday for me.
And I went to take my MCAT and I didn't do as well. I was so devastated. I was like, oh, I'm never going to be a doctor. I need to give up. Maybe this is a sign. And then one of my family friend who was a doctor gave me a pep talk. I went a month later and I did really well. And I got into UV, a bunch of other schools. So I ended up going to University of Virginia, which is a really good med school. And just really enjoyed my time there. And then even that, I was torn. I was like, should I do pediatrics? Should I do family medicine? Should I do pediatrics? Should I do family medicine? And actually at one point I was like, maybe I don't want to practice medicine because my family traveled a lot and I really liked the idea of doing like global health, public health. So I actually I took like a break from med school. Between my 3rd and 4th year of med school, I went to Johns Hopkins, got a master's of public health degree because I was like, maybe I just want to be like a public health doctor and not like practice clinical medicine, but like just take care of like population health. So like the people who work at the CDC, who make the decisions about like the COVID mask mandates, that kind of sort of thing. I thought maybe I wanted to do that instead. So I did my MPH and I was like, oh, it's nice, but I like talking to patients. I like interacting with patients and I really like the relationships that I get to form with my patients. So then I went back, finished my last year of medical school and then started off in pediatrics. Didn't really like it, not because I didn't like taking care of kids. I still take care of kids right now, but I knew I just did not only want to take care of kids. And so I switched into family medicine. And the reason I love family medicine, it's also an avenue for me to help people. I look back, because I always wonder, I'm like, what would have happened if I just stayed with peace? I could have done that. But now I get calls, like people call me from back home. Oh, my mom has this problem and this and this and this. And I can really give them my advice. I can advise really anybody because I take care of kids from when they're born until adults, even until they die. So I take care of people from cradle to grave. And so it's really been a blessing, actually, when I look back. I think throughout the journey may have not made sense, but it's really been a blessing. And I'm grateful because I thought I wanted to be a trauma surgeon. But then when I thought about the lifestyle, I really wanted to have a family. And I really wanted to have relationships. I didn't want to just like, operate on someone and then say bye. Like it was really important for me to be able to form bonds with my patients. And so ultimately family medicine has really been a blessing for me. And it's really also given me the platform and the opportunity to really bless people and to provide like some support for people, especially when their parents are sick or their family members are sick and they're in the hospital and they may not understand what is happening. A lot of people will call me and I'll provide them that guidance, but also practicing in this area. A lot of times when, family members are hospitalized, I do have a lot of friends in the area. And typically if I had a situation with my cousin's friend who was admitted to the intensive care unit and they felt like they weren't being heard because of the reason why she was there, and then also because of their skin color as well. So I knew someone who worked at the hospital, but even that same night, I was able to call and at least just talk to the doctors that were on there and act as a bridge, and also just deal with some cultural differences. So that way everybody was happy, which is really good. Okay.
Okay. I hope you guys are taking notes. This is really good information. We have another question in the chat. How do you know you're not making the wrong choice in terms of a career or career-wise? I have so many interests, but none of them really align with each other, and I'm not sure what to do because I don't want to be in a career that I end up disliking.
Okay, that's a really good question. So what I would say, as far as I am in my life, every decision, even the quote unquote wrong decisions, end up being the right decisions, right? Because these are the decisions that end up taking you to where you need to be. And it's almost like, guys, I don't know if you guys, how young you guys are. Back in the day, we had to like write down the directions on a piece of paper. And then if you were driving and you missed a turn, you had to go back to the last place that you were to start all over again. But now we have the GPS and it just redirects you. So I kind of feel like that's how it is in life decisions. Like even these quote unquote wrong decisions. Because for me, I'm the kind of person, I really still struggle with this, but thanks for the grace of God, like being a perfectionist, doing everything the quote unquote right way and all that stuff. And you have to realize that all that goes out the window. This is life. Like this is what life is for. Life is to figure out what you like, what you don't like, what you're good at, what you're not good at. And so the important thing is to get rid of the fear, right? So you just have to like try things out and really figure it out. I think on average, people change like careers like 5 times or so in their lifetime. And so I know sometimes it feels like you have to choose this one thing and stick with this one thing for the rest of your life. But I know people, when I was in medical school, I know people who were in their 40s who were like nurses in the past and decided to do medicine. I knew somebody who was a consultant, nothing in medicine, who decided at age 39 he wanted to go to med school. So you can, if you like doing so many things, explore all those things and obviously pray to God, like, hey, okay, God, you've given me all these amazing skills. What do you want me to do with them? And then I think the other important thing to also tease out, right, is sometimes people get to do exactly what they love for a living, right? But as I'm getting older, I'm really realizing that sometimes we do maybe not what we love or what we enjoy or what we're good at or to make a living, but then we also have hobbies and we have like side interests, right? That we can still get to do as well, So for me, like I thought I wanted to do public health because I could get to travel and I like to travel, right? So now I don't, with the kind of job I get, I don't really travel with my job. But now what I'm working with the university, the Howard University at the School of Medicine, is to try to have a global health program. So that way I can get students on the international stage and to travel. But then I also realized, okay, my job right now, I don't get to travel, right? But I can do that at leisure. Like I still get satisfaction from my job. And then I just travel for fun. I found a job that gives me enough paid time off. It gives me enough vacation time so that I can travel, and also gives me enough flexibility. I don't work on most weekends now. So now I can go on a short little trip. So sometimes teasing that out is really good because sometimes a few people get lucky and they find that one job that merges all their loves together, but remembering that you can do something you like that gives you money so that you can really do the things that you love to do, because I think that's where sometimes like people kind of get tied up. I don't think you should ever choose a job because it pays a lot of money if you hate it, because you're going to be miserable. But you do have to pay your bills. If you have student loan debt, you have to be realistic. And so you do want to find something that you enjoy that makes money. And even if it doesn't put all your loves together, then you can seek other interests, some side gigs. I know doctors who paint on the side, who are like pianists on the side, they play instruments on the side, they have a band on the side, they still go to work every day, or they're 9 to 5 as a doctor, but they have fun things that they do on the side. And the other thing too is you can work somewhere for a few years and say, okay, I don't like me. I was like a pediatrician. I was like, I don't like this. I did family medicine. So you can like decide, okay, I want to be a math teacher, right? And then decide, oh, no. I've done this for a while. I now want to be a nurse. And it's perfectly okay. There's nothing right or wrong in doing that.
I love that. I love that you mentioned, paraphrasing, that basically this is life, that it's about taking risks and everything. So I think it's important that we all get rid of that fear, Thank you for sharing that. Another question is, I'm currently a public health major. What difference?
I think you meant what different options are available.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, in the field.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
Awesome. Okay, no, it's okay. I figured. I was like, I read into it. Awesome. So, man, public health is huge. There's so many things you can do in public health, right? So, like, you can go work for the CDC with public health. You can, oh man, there's like you can work for the Food and Drug Administration with public health. I'm trying to think of my friends who did public health and what they do. I have a friend who's a lawyer who went to public health school with me, and she heads the Center of Health Policy out at Rutgers now in New Jersey. I have another friend of mine who does like food insecurity stuff. So she like travels across the globe and helps like countries basically like meet their need for food insecurity. So like a lot of agriculture stuff and like planting food. And I have another friend who does grant writing. She helps people get grants for their projects. All within, these are all the people, I'm thinking about all the people I went to public health school with. And I have a friend who's an OBGYN. She delivers babies. She works in Boston. And then she travels internationally to help deliver babies for free. I have another friend who also went to public health school with me, who's a doctor, who actually works permanently overseas with Doctors Without Borders. She was like the first person to give the vaccine for Ebola. She administered it. So there's so much, like the possibilities, man, are endless. There's like so many things you can really do with a public health degree. And it's really up to you. If you want to do research, you can do research. If you want to work for like organization, you can work for an organization. And if you want, you can do something completely different and start your own nonprofit. That's an option as well. Yeah, I see someone said NGOs. So you can work for NGOs. I mean, there's so many options. And to be honest with me, who knows? Like, I'm sure like now I have a young child. Maybe when I get older, I may quit practicing medicine and go work for the World Health Organization and live somewhere in Africa, something like that, you know? So, I mean, like life changes and life happens. And I think the important thing is just, there's no right answer. I finally figured that out. I used to really struggle with anxiety, and it's something I'm still working on, because, you know, you always want to make the perfect decision. You want to do everything the right way. And there's really no right way. It's just like any decision you make is the right decision. I went to get my nails done the other day, and the lady was like, "What color?" And I literally just picked a color and gave it to her. She's like, "Oh, you did it so fast." I said, I used to like overthink and think and look at all the different colors when I used to get my nails done. And then I realized if I don't like it, I can switch it in like a few weeks. You know, it's not the end of the world. It's kind of like with decisions. Like when you go to medical school, they say MD, make decisions. Like the worst thing to do is not to make a decision. In life, you just make a decision, like, and that decision just takes you. And in the end, it just works out, you know?
TJ, you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question. I think you kind of answered it when you were talking about like you can do a job but also be doing stuff separate from your job. But my question was about kind of having your career and then but also taking your faith very seriously. And I guess, and you talked about like how like with your like specific line of work, like you can kind of slide it in. And I'm planning on going to law school. And so something that like I really struggled with is like I'm not entirely sure like the setting in which I would be working, but just kind of the question of, yeah, like how, or if you've ever found it an issue with bringing your faith into your profession. And then also, I'm also from Sierra Leone, by the way, and my grandmother's maiden name was Balat, so I feel like I'm related to your husband.
You probably are, because they're such a very small family.
It's tiny, but that's a separate conversation. Yeah, but that was my question.
Okay, awesome. That's a really excellent question that you asked, right? And I think especially for me in the science field, people are like, oh, how do you believe in God and then believe in science? To me, it's like really easy, you know, like, interestingly, I don't have a tough time. And so in the same vein, because I'm a Christian, I can sometimes be a bridge to people who sometimes want to be like super religious about matters, right? Because I can say, okay, because this is how I always think about things. God isn't going to come from heaven to reveal things to us, right? God uses people to reveal things to us. I think God gives me the wisdom to help me take care of my patients. God gives the people who created vaccines the wisdom to create vaccines. So to me, inherently, everything comes from God, right? And so that's kind of like how I see that picture, especially when it comes to, like, when I go to vaccinate my child, I'm like, give her all the vaccines. I don't have a problem with and yeah, I'm a strong Christian. I'm like not shy of my faith. And most people at work know that I'm a Christian. But that's kind of how I do. And then and for me, like, I don't even see, like, there's nothing like, oh, how did the world come about? I don't even get into those conversations or arguments with people. Interestingly, people don't bring those kind of conversations to me. I wonder if they just think I'm a Christian and I'm not the person to really have a conversation with. But no one has ever even tried to like bring that up to me at work or anywhere before, now that I think about it. But to me, it's just easy. And I feel like this is my platform that God has given me. And interesting, Dr. Patricia also works at Howard. She sent me this thing about like healing. I think Christ is the ultimate healer, right? He's the divine healer, right? And he just uses me as a vessel to heal people, right? And so what he does and what I do are in line together. So for me, it's not really complicated. Maybe I've oversimplified it, but that's just how I see it. And in terms of you being a lawyer, I'm not a lawyer by any means, but I think sometimes like people are like, oh, I feel like lawyers have to lie. I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know. This is what people say. Like, oh, lawyers, you have to kind of lie or like shift the truth. But there's so many things you can do in law. I can think of 5 friends who are lawyers who have never stepped foot in a court before. I have my very good buddy who I spoke to this week. He is a tax attorney for the IRS, and he basically writes the codes, like the tax codes, like the legal tax codes for the IRS. He has never stepped foot in a courtroom ever in his practice in life. And interestingly, he's somebody who really, he's an accountant, and he's also a lawyer. So this is an example of how like people who have 2 loves for 2 different things can kind of merge them together. And he plays the guitar. So right now he works from home. And so he works with the IRS and he works from home and writes all these fancy tax law codes. And then he plays his instruments when he's not at work or on his off time.
Yep, that's very true, Dr. Barak. I'm not cutting you off, but I'm working with the Department of Justice and I'm working with lawyers. And I'm literally working with attorneys. You know, she wants to do law attorneys. They are in the office. They are going in court once in a while. They travel once in a while to go in court. So they are just sitting there bossing us around, and that's all they are doing. So if you want to do law, and she said something, I don't want to take the floor here, but I just want to stop there. You said what Dr. Patricia sent you, she sent you a document and it said something like you are a vessel that God is using to heal people. Just like a lawyer, what does the Bible say about the Holy Spirit? Your defender. That God over there is your defender, your advocate. So if you see yourself as an advocate, God is just using you to advocate for people. So easy.
That is so true. And then I'm planning to avoid court at so what I was going to say, the other thing I was going to say too is no one asked this question, but I think this is very important. If you're interested in something, the only way to know is to shadow somebody or work with someone. Like going back to me, like I always had this grand idea of wanting to be a doctor, but I was like, is this just all in my head? Or is this something real, right? So I had to go work with a doctor for the summer to be like, oh, I really love this. This is actually real. So this is my plug. I will have Mrs. Belong share my information, my personal cell phone number. If you're interested in medicine, hit me up. Like you can come shadow me. You can come to my job. Like we'll keep you right now in just the clinic. The COVID numbers are getting better, but you can come shadow me in clinic and just kind of see like what happens, what I do on a day-to-day basis. But even if you don't, like for people who want to do anything, people want to be lawyers or something, There, either if you don't have someone in your family, you have your neighbors, there are tons of people at church. And I know like it's almost like intimidating to ask them like an adult, like, oh, can I please? But they're willing and they would love for you to come shadow them. So that's also kind of way to like say, okay, I want to do all these things. How can I do them? And you can just reach out to people. And when you're applying for med school, I don't know about law school, but when you're applying for med school, they want to see that you've shadowed a doctor. They want to see that it's not just this like abstract thought, but you've gone the extra step to actually like work in a doctor's office or work in a hospital. And so you should really be seeking these opportunities to have tangible experiences in the areas that you're interested. Even if you're in a high school student, you can still do that.
And do you have a question?
Someone says, do you accept interns? I need internship in med. Oh, there's a direct message. Okay, yes. Sorry. But I see somebody's hand up.
I have a question. Oh. Should I go?
Yeah, you can go.
You can go, and then Anne will go after you.
Question, what's the age? Can I shadow you? Is there an age limit?
Is this Mrs. Taylor?
Isn't she?
There is not an age. Remember I told you people go to med school and they're like 40s and everything. There's not an age limit.
I'll be coming along for the field trip too.
No problem. The more the merrier.
And go.
Yes. So I just honestly like listening to you talk is like such a blessing, because it's so funny, because I was praying to God about how I'm like so confused with the career that I chose. So I'm on the path to become an OBGYN, and hearing you talk about your experiences and stuff like that, the main thing that I was confused about was how can I handle being a OBGYN and still want to be very active in the church. And also I have like business endeavors too. So it's like, because God has given me so many gifts and so many talents, and I know he wants me to use each and every single one of them. So it's really hard to like merge. And like, is there, I don't know, but have you seen anyone who is like balancing them all?
Yeah, so that's a great question that you asked. And I'm glad you even asked that last question, because I was just ready to like throw examples at you. So one of the things I've also learned in life is you can do all the things you want to do. You just can't do them all at the same time, right? So there's a point, like when I was in residency, I was working a lot. I barely saw my child, you know. Now I'm home. I'm now that, you know, like I have this faculty job, I am home on the weekends. I get to spend more time with my child, you know, I get to be a more active parent, you know. So you can do everything that you want to do, but not all at the same time. And so that's why we have seasons in our life, right? Like that's the one thing my Auntie Lima too, she taught me that when I was really young. She was like, there's a season for everything, even with your friends. She was really talking about friends when she was telling me that some people come into your life for a season, some people come to your life for a reason, some people come to your life for a lifetime, but you have seasons in your life, right? And so you can be this amazing OBGYN, right? And probably when you start off, you have a ton of student loan debt and you're just trying to pay them off. And so you're just working. You're also trying to catch up with your friends who have been working for 10 years while you're in school for that extra 10 years. You know, so you're trying to catch up with your friends, you're trying to pay off this entire second mortgage that's student loan debt, right? And then at some point, you can do all these things. So the person I'm thinking of, I know someone, a family friend of mine, Fatu Fornesise, she's an OBGYN. She worked for Kaiser Permanente for the longest time. She quit her job like 5 or 6 years ago, went back to Sierra Leone, and she was like the lead doctor for the WHO, you know? Things like she did it for 1 or 2 years. She moved her entire family back to Sierra Leone. She has like 4 little kids. And I don't think it really worked out for her. She came back for 1 year and then she started her own business. She has an organization that she's actually always had, a foundation that she's always had, but now she had more time to really invest in this foundation. So she actually opened an OBGYN residency. Her husband's also a pediatrician. So they actually have a pediatrics and an OBGYN residency. And they got this huge, like a multi-million grant for it. So she quit her job again. And so what she does is something called locums. It's like you work, you like work 3 or 4 months at a time. Like you get a gig, you're like, okay, I'm going to work this gig for 1 month. So they pay, it's like travel nursing, but doctors. So they pay you a lot of money because they're not paying you for your health insurance. They're not paying you for any of that stuff. And they really need you because they're really short. So they pay you a lot more, like sometimes 2 times or 1.5 times more as they would typically pay to other people. So she does that. And then, so it allows her the flexibility to go to Sierra Leone frequently. In between when she's not in Sierra Leone, she's here and she's doing that kind of work. And so she gets to kind of do all the things that she wants to do. I know someone else who is really big in her faith, who's an ophthalmologist. I'm from Sierra Leone, so I apologize. So I'm giving you a lot of Sierra Leone examples because that's what I know personally. So she's an eye doctor, she's an ophthalmologist, and she works out in Loma Linda. It's a place in California with a huge Christian population, mostly like Seventh-day Adventists. So she's also really big in her faith. And so she goes with her church, and they actually in Sierra Leone right now, and they're doing this whole wild, like a tour. And she brought other doctors from Loma Linda Hospital, and they're doing surgeries on people, like people who haven't ever seen in their lives or haven't seen in years. And they can finally see, which is amazing. Like that's just, it's life-changing surgeries that she's doing. So she can't do those surgeries all the time, and it's free of charge. Obviously, we would love to be able to do that all the time, but she can't do that. She has to be here. She has a family. So she's here, and then she goes for like, you know, every year she does like a mission trip. And so it allows her to still get to do the things that she loves to do. So yes, so you can be a businesswoman. You can be an OBGYN. Your Christianity should never be on the side. But I think if anything makes you feel like you have to compromise your Christianity, it's probably not for you. I don't think anything should make you compromise your Christianity, not even work. Are there times in my career that I couldn't go to church on Sundays? Yes, there were times, but just because I have to work, everybody else has to work. But sometimes what I did, because some of my other colleagues like to be off on a Saturday to do social things, I like to be off on a Sunday to work. Sometimes I can make that change. Hey, let me work for you on Saturday, and then you work for me on Sunday, you know? But does it always happen? No. So sometimes those kind of things happen where like, you can't go to church on Sundays, but nowadays you can listen to church online, or you can go to Friday service or Saturday service. But so there are those little things, but if something has to make you really compromise your Christianity, then that's a red flag.
I wanted to add, this is really good. I wanted to add on, if I can, a good friend of mine is a project manager and also an IT specialist. And she also owns her own photography business. And back in the day, she also used to manage a website. And then she's really good at art and artistry. So she used to also do paintings and things like that. And at a certain point, it just got overwhelming and too much. So, so what's been already said, she realized that she was doing way too much. And so now she narrowed it down to obviously her 9 to 5 currently, and then she still has her photography on the side. And I wonder how she does it all, but really I see that she's driven by, she's passionate, you know, she's passionate about what she's doing. So she's driven by her passion. I think that her passion allows her to make time for what she actually likes. And so I think just like Dr. FATMATTA said, it's very much possible. Any other questions before I ask my question?
Someone said, what's the work time for doctors in a week? Man, that's a loaded question. So it depends where. So, oh man. So to be a doctor, so you do 4 years of undergrad, right? You do 4 years in medical school, which is tough because your friends are in their 20s, they're getting married, they're having kids, they're going on vacation. I still remember sitting in the library, looking at people's posts on Facebook. Like after you've been in the library for 12 plus hours and you're like, oh my goodness, everybody's living their best life and I'm here. And then you do residency. So after medical school, like your last year in medical school, you decide what specialty you want to go into, right? So then you go do residency. So depending on the specialty, residency can be anywhere from 3 to 10 years. And then you can do fellowship. It goes on and on and on. But really, when you're in residency, that's probably when you work the most. Like you work 80 hours a week. So you're like going into work at 5 or 6 in the morning, sometimes not leaving till after 9. You take call, meaning you work anywhere from like 24 to 36 hours straight. So those are tough. Those are hard, because sometimes even you just even have to pray. I remember I became such good friends with the nurses so they wouldn't call me so much. Because imagine if even like sometimes you have a call room, but it's not your house. And then you're thinking in your mind, what if people call me about a patient, I don't wake up, then what, So you really can't sleep. And then at night, the nurses are calling you for stuff, and then you have admissions. And then if you're a surgeon, you're operating, OBGYN, you have deliveries. So the hours are long, is grueling. Somebody's going to tell you you're not supposed to be a doctor. It's a lot of hazing. It's a lot of proving yourself that you're supposed to be here. It's because a lot of people who go into medicine have like type A personalities. And then people are like, oh, I remember this person when I was younger, they hazed me. So now I'm going to have to haze you too. I don't do that. But so it's the hours, man, the hours are long. It's not for the faint-hearted. I'm going to tell you guys that off the bat. But God is faithful, and God will give you the strength to persevere if that's what you want to do. But the hours are long. Now, once you're out of practice, it's up to you what you want. Obviously, if you're a surgeon, it depends what kind of surgeon you are, right? Because if you're like a foot doctor, a podiatrist, there's rarely any emergency surgeries for foot doctors or even eye doctors. Like there's rarely a reason for you to get an emergency. And you will have emergencies, but they're kind of rare, right? But if you're like a trauma surgeon, if you're a neurosurgeon, if you're a general surgeon, even if you're a cardiothoracic, like a heart surgeon, a lot of times you're on call. If you're OBGYN, you're always going to be on call. So those are the things that kind of like pull you away from your family. Like, you're eating dinner with friends and your pager goes off and you kind of have to leave and go. So, but you can also kind of decide. Nowadays, people really care about work-life balance. Even my friends who are OBGYNs, they work with other doctors and those doctors cover for them. So even if it's their patient, somebody else just has to deliver them, or else you literally have to be on call all the time, waiting for your pregnant ladies to deliver. And you can't control when kids come. They come early, they come later, they come at odd times of the day. So it all depends what you want. So I personally chose the job I'm working now in academia and academics because I wanted to be home more. So I don't typically work weekends. I work maybe like I'll say like maybe like 6 weekends a year, no more than 8 weekends a year. And even at that, I just work a half day. So it's really chill. I sometimes get to work from home with the telemedicine stuff. And because I teach, I sometimes get to do lectures online like this. So because of the Zoom stuff, it's really been helpful. But there are different avenues. There are people who are hospitalists who only work in the hospital. And typically the schedule for those people, they work 14 days straight, which is really exhausting. But then they have 14 days off when they don't work. And then there are people who work in the emergency room who do shift work. So they may work 10 shifts, like it's either 10, 12-hour shifts, 10, 10-hour shifts a month. And it can vary. It can be like an 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. It can be whatever, 2 a.m. to they're crazy shifts. So there are different really things to do. And you get to determine, you also determine how much you want to work. Obviously, the more you work, the more money you make. But I think you also have to realize what is important to you, because money isn't everything. Do you want to spend more time at home with your family? Do you want to have more time to explore your business opportunities or to explore, your other loves that you have, to like start the side gig that you've been wanting to start? So there's so many things that go into it, but you ultimately, once you're done with training, you ultimately decide how much you want to work or how little you want to work.
Any physical therapist shadowing I can attend, JF is asking.
JF, yes, JF, I can link you up with a physical therapist. Yes.
Wonderful. You guys feel free to unmute if you have any questions. I was wondering how much weight does your, or how much influence does your personality have, or should your personality have on your career choice? So for example, right, you said that you enjoy talking to people. So that's how you knew that, okay, you wanted to really go into medicine. So should that be more of like, should that be an influence, or could it be a hindrance? Should someone rely on their personality? Should someone not rely on their personality too much?
Whew, that's a really great question. It's a loaded question. Yes and no, right? Because there's a niche for everyone. So in medicine, there are people who are pathologists. They never talk to a patient. They're the people who are like, you do the autopsies. They only talk to the dead people and they look at cells under the microscope. And early on in med school, you kind of know who's going to be a pathologist, right? We had the running joke in my med school, you know who's going to do what. So there's a job for everyone. Like if you don't want, and then they're the radiologists. I had one of my really good friends in med school. She's so smart, but she's clearly an introvert, doesn't want to talk to people. So she's a radiologist. So when you want to get your knee x-rayed or whatever x-ray, she sits in a really dark room by herself with a bunch of computers and reads the x-rays. She doesn't touch, ever since med school, she doesn't touch a single live patient. So she doesn't interact with people. So there's a lot of things you can do. So depending on your personality, so that's why I say yes or no. So obviously, when you think of what you want to do your day to day, you can determine it. Like my friend who I told you is a tax attorney, a tax accountant, a tax attorney, excuse me. He's an introvert. He cannot be in the courtroom. And there are people who are extroverted who need to be talking to people all the time and blah, blah, blah. So yes and no, because honestly, you can find a niche in whatever you do that allows you to either be out in the open as much as possible or be a snail and be in your shell as much as possible. So it determines it. So yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Krishna wants to know any OBGYNs or midwifery shadowing.
Yes, you guys hit me up. Feel free. I can put my phone number out here actually. Text me. I am if you call me, I may not answer, but if you text me, it's the best way. And just say, hey, this is so-and-so from Harvest. This is my phone number. And I can link you up. And I'm going to just touch on something because Krishna's question, any OBGYN or midwifery. I think a lot of times when people want to go into medicine, it's like, okay, do I want to be a nurse practitioner? Do I want to be a doctor? Trying to really make that decision as to what. I'm going to be really honest with you guys. If I could do it all over again, I probably would have not been a doctor. I think I probably would have been like a midwife or like a nurse practitioner. And only reason I say this, I'm happy I'm a doctor. Don't get me wrong. I'm a medical doctor because nurse practitioners are also doctors, but but I'm a medical doctor, which is slightly different because our training is different, right? But so when I went to med school, when I was an undergrad, I had my friend. She's actually a nurse practitioner in Texas now. We did 4 years of undergrad together. She did 2 years of an additional program to be a nurse practitioner and started making money right away. Okay. During that time, I did 4 years of medical school. I did a whole residency in pediatrics, did a second residency in family medicine. I mean, she has a good 10 years advance of making money. I mean, it's not always money, don't get me wrong, but like she still gets to take care of patients, and she actually teaches nurse practitioners now. She still gets to do all those stuff. So it all really depends on like what you want to do. Like I thought I wanted to be a trauma surgeon, and I was like, oh wait, trauma surgeons, you're always on call, you really don't have a life. And I knew I wanted to get married, I knew I wanted to have a family, and I knew those things were really important to me. So people always ask me, going back, should I be go to do medicine and go to medical school, or should I be a nurse practitioner? So it all depends what you want to do, because clearly like nurse practitioners, yes, they can do primary care. You can be a midwife and an OBGYN. Midwives, to the best of my knowledge, don't operate. I think like on the West Coast and in like really rural areas, they do. They do like C-sections and all that stuff. But OBGYNs do much more than just deliver babies. They, you know, like if people have fibroids, they take their fibroids out. You know, if you want a hysterectomy, if you want to take out your entire uterus, they do those surgeries. You know, if you don't want to have any kids anymore and you want to, you know, have your tubes tied, they do that kind of sort of stuff. So they're surgeons too. So it's much more than just delivering a baby. And so you kind of determining like what you want to do. I think if you want to do primary care, there's utility in considering going to nurse practitioner. It's less time of like less training time that you spend. And then it allows you to not have as much student loans. I mean, student loans will weigh you down, you know? And then especially like if you're torn, I always recommend people like, if you have the opportunity, get a BSN, a bachelor's of science in nursing as an undergrad. It is the best degree to get out of. You get 4 years, you come out, you're a nurse. You can go work as right now they're paying nurses boku money. There's a huge nursing shortage. Especially if you're young, you can travel, go be a nurse. Because I remember when I was in med school, the people who did nursing and came to become a doctor, they were very good doctors because a lot of us just went to undergrad. We've never really done any clinical medicine before. But as a nurse, you really understand the nitty-gritty of medicine. Like they really hold everything down. So if you go be a nurse for a few years and you said, okay, I want to go to med school, you can still go to med school. It's still the same 4 years of undergrad you had to do anyways. And there's no such major as a pre-med. You choose whatever major you want to do. And I tell people, if you want to do medicine, choose what you love. Like if you like music, this is the time to be a music major, get the highest GPA possible, do your medical sciences and your prerequisites that you need, and keep it pushing. And you're always going to learn about science once you get into medical school. So if you're torn between those two, do the RN thing, work for a little bit, see how it feels. You can always go back to school and be a doctor, or you can go back and be a nurse practitioner and keep it moving. But if you go to school and you're torn and you go like major in psychology or chemistry, I have a cousin like this who was torn, who ended up being like a science major. Now she's going back to school to get her BSN when she could have done it on the first go around, you know? So that would be my advice for you. Get a BSN, figure it out, and kind of go there. Someone said, are you familiar with physician assistant, how that's different from a nurse practitioner? Yes. So physician assistants, so let me back check. All of these physician assistant and nurse practitioner are state-based. Certain states, like now in the state of Maryland and Virginia, nurse practitioners can practice alone. Before, they had to basically be supervised by a doctor or be attached to like a physician license. In the state of Maryland, that's not the case. They can practice on their own outpatient medicine. There's a limitation to it. Inpatient medicine, they still need to be attached to a doctor, to a medical doctor. So a PA in the state of Maryland has to work with a physician at all times. So like they can see their own patients, but you need to work in a clinic with a physician. So it all depends. So it's all state-based. So you need to like look up what a state allows for a physician assistant versus a nurse practitioner. But what I would say is there's a huge shortage of doctors. And so being a physician assistant and a nurse practitioner are great avenues to be able to still take care of patients and not have as much debt and not take as much time to do that, especially if you want to pursue other options, or if you have other things you also want to do. It's definitely a great idea, especially if you don't want to be like a surgeon, or even now anesthesiologists, they have like the nurse anesthesiologist, but you still have to be a nurse first. It's typically like the first tier, which is why I'm saying get a BSN if you're torn. Physician assistant is different. It's not based off of nursing. It's something completely different.
So for those who are still in high school, how would you say they should go about making their college decisions? So what exactly should they look for? I know some can be confused with, you know, college A versus college B, college D versus college E. What were you looking for and what drew you to Vanderbilt?
Oh, wow. That's a really good question, man. These are good questions. So my decision was easy. I got a full ride. And that made it really easy to me. But I want to just say something. Let me back up a second. I remember when I was in high school, I think I had like a 3.8 GPA. I was like National Honor Society, all this stuff. And my counselor had the nerve to tell me not to apply to any Ivy League schools, that I will not get in. So I just want to say this, but I don't want to forget. Don't listen to your counselors. Don't. Some of these people are like destiny stealers. Don't listen to them. Don't let people speak on your life about stuff they have no space to speak on your life. Don't get deterred from that either, because it's really sad. Like, your counselor is supposed to be the person who gives you guidance. And I've heard from many people, especially people of color, that their guidance counselor basically try to kill their dreams of whatever they wanted to do. So I actually use that as a stepping stone. I was like, oh, you said I can't do this, watch me do this, you know? So I just want to throw that plug in. Don't listen to your guidance counselor, especially if they're saying crazy things like that. But really and truly, my decision was easy. I got a full ride. I was like, I'm not leaving money on the table. And I just applied. I mean, I'm not even a first generation American, because I wasn't even born here. So I'm an immigrant. And like, I didn't know, like, no one was there to tell me or show me or anything, but I was in the library all the time. I was looking up things. And luckily some of a lot of my close friends were also interested in the same things. So I was just like going online, looking and just trying to figure out, okay, so which schools are good, which schools are good for this, which schools are good for that, and just really talking to people. And then in high school, I did a lot of like girls' state, I don't know if they still do that, girls' state, and a lot of like statewide activities that really exposed me to other people that really told me about certain things that I probably didn't know about. But there are tons of scholarships out there. You can go online and just Google. Tons of scholarships out there for like whatever interests you may have. Scholarships because like your mom's a single parent. I got some money because my mom was a single parent. There's a lot of scholarships. So definitely don't leave money on the table, especially if you want to do something that's a long career. It's going to be very expensive. So you want to get as much money. I only started taking student loan debt when I was like in medical school. So that was really helpful. The other advice I will give, if you're not sure what you want to do, go to community college. I think sometimes people want to look down on community college, but I had a friend who went to community college for 2 years and then transferred to an Ivy League. So sometimes, like, if you don't know what you want to do, it's a really good stepping stone, especially Montgomery College, both even PG Community College. But Montgomery College is like one of the best community colleges out there in the entire country. I don't know if people know that, but it's really, really good. So it allows you to like take classes, maybe even get an associate's degree. And especially if you, going back to your question about like your personality, especially if you're the kind of person that's like not sure how you do like being away from home, it still allows you to like be at home with your parents and save money up, go to community college for a few years, and then transfer to, you know, like a 4-year college and get your bachelor's degree from that standpoint. But really knowing where, I think choosing where you're going, knowing your personality. Do you want to be away from home? Can you handle being away from home? And those are really honest questions you have to ask yourselves, because your whole life, you've lived at home with your parents. When you're in college, no one tells you, oh, don't drink that alcohol, go study, don't do this, you know, but the Holy Spirit that's going to be like nagging you in the head over here. And then you have all the peer pressure of your friends telling you to do stuff. So really knowing who you are, like, can you really handle it? And that takes an honest conversation with yourself and your parents. Like, am I the right person to go away to college? Is this the right thing for me to do right now? And if it is, then determining like, okay, I play sports, I play basketball, I play football. So that can also kind of go in the direction of where you're going to go, especially if you want to, if that's something you take really seriously and you want to play college football or college basketball, that kind of sort of thing. If that is not in your arena, look up places that are good for certain things. Like, okay, I want to do IT. So what school is good for IT? And then I think also look for places where they help their graduates find jobs. Because that's the whole point of going to school. You want to get a job, you want to make a living, you want to like figure out your purpose in life, right? So like if make sure your university is invested in making sure they guide you in the next steps, whether that's grad school, whether that is finding a job. And sometimes it's all about your network. So they say your network determines your net worth, right? So like a lot of times, a lot of these like rich people talk about affirmative action all day. A lot of these rich people get into places not because of their grades, but because of who their dads know, or who their dads play golf with, or who their dads, work in the operating room with. I have seen it with my 2 eyes. So also knowing that, okay, sometimes you choose a school just to be like, okay, it's gonna give me access. It's gonna open my network. Like the alumni network is really large. There's a lot of times I've gone for interviews and I'm like, oh, I went to Vanderbilt, and oh, I went to Vanderbilt too. And then boom, I get stuff that I probably would have never gotten, but like, because we have that, connection there, I have definitely gotten favor, in that kind of sense.
So there's a question in the chat. What's the benefit of doing research in uni?
Oh, so it depends what you want to do. So if you want to do medicine, it is very important to have research under your belt. And what I did, and it's been so long, I don't know if things are the same, but I did a work, I don't know what to call it. It's like work, oh God, research work. I don't know, there's a word for it. I apologize, I'm blanking out of it. But it's like you get paid to do research. And so I found a job where I got paid, but I was doing research at the same time. And it was really awesome. But even if you're not getting paid, once again, you need someone to write you a letter of recommendation. And when you're an undergrad, especially in those big chemistry classes, it's really hard for the professor to know you. This is not a question you asked, but I just have to do a quick sidebar. Especially if you want to know, like, let me talk about medicine specifically, because I know that. So you're in this big chemistry class, go to the TA hours. When your professor has hours and like question hours, I don't care if you don't have a question, go and sit. Because if you're in a class of like 1,000 people or 500 or 200, he or she does not know who you are. But if you go to those questions, sometimes, even if you don't have a question, that person gets to see you. You make sure you introduce yourself to that person. I still remember my chemistry teacher. I used to go to all of his like question and answer sessions, and I introduced myself. And I remember when I got an A on my exam, I mean, obviously I always think because I'm Black, it may not be, but I always think of that. But he was like so impressed. And like 2 years later, he still remembered me and wrote me a really good letter of recommendation for med school, So you have to put yourself out there because you're going to need letters at some point, right? So really, really, you want to put yourself out there, go to the TA hours, make sure your professors know you, ask them questions. I mean, don't be an annoying nag. Don't like ask questions just to ask questions in class, but make sure people know you and you're out there. Do research, because research also allows you to get to know a professor on a personal level. Like, I know the guy I did research for, I babysat his kid. I went to his house for potlucks. Like, we were really cool. I can still call him up today, so we were like really, really cool. And so it was really easy for me to ask him for a letter of recommendation. So it's also really important. That's why I also kind of think is nice to have a mentor, because they know what you're going to need ahead of time. And they can tell you, okay, start doing this and start doing that. And this is how you study for this. And don't take too many hard classes all at once. Like, people who want to go to med school don't have to be pre-med. Take the easiest major whatsoever, so you get the highest GPA, spread your science courses wide. And then if and someone told me this, because physics at Vanderbilt was very hard. So somebody told me, don't take physics there. So I took physics. It's biochemistry, sorry, biochemistry. I took biochemistry at Maryland. And because I'm a Maryland resident, I think it didn't even cost me that much money. But like, I did biochemistry there, and it transfers over. So you want to find these people who can tell you these like tricks of the trade. You don't want to learn it the hard way because you went and failed biochemistry, and now you have to retake biochemistry and you're crying because your GPA tanked and you're wondering if you're ever going to go to med school.
Yes, that's what we said, lots of wisdom here. Yes. Did you ever get a paid internship?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, research assistant. Thank you. I can't remember. Did I ever get a? No, that's what I guess that's what that is. That's what I did, like a research assistant. You got paid, and you got to do the kind of work. So when I worked, so one summer, the summer I worked with a doctor, it wasn't supposed to be paid, but they were really impressed because I basically did like the job of the MA. I went in there and I just got my hands dirty. I wasn't shy. I was like, I'm here to help. I can do whatever you want me to do. By the end of the summer, I was doing EKGs. I was doing everything. Like when you walked in there, you probably thought I worked at that place. I literally was just like one of them. I ate lunch with them. I went out to lunch with them. I just really immersed myself and they were just so impressed and they paid me. And that's how I bought, and I used that money to buy my first car. I'll never forget.
So you mentioned earlier that you had a really high GPA, 3.8, which is amazing. I want to ask a question for those maybe who may not have a GPA that's that high, you know, who may feel discouraged, you know, who may feel like, I don't have a GPA that high, I can't get there. You know, what can they do? What tips or advice could you give them to maybe improve their GPA, or I don't know, what could you advise them to just even beyond the GPA, like what can they do to even push forward and to still achieve their goal or their dreams?
Right. Okay. So first thing first, it is never over. Okay. Like there's not such a thing as, oh, this is impossible, or I can never do this. Now that I failed this class, this can never happen. Now that this thing happens to me, this can never. Where there is a will, there is a way. You just have to figure out how you're going to do it. I mean, because people make mistakes. This is life. Like going back to the person trying to figure out, oh, how do I know what I'm supposed to do? This is life, and life is a journey. And it's through this journey, by making mistakes, by the right, wrong decisions, or ups and downs, that we really like figure out our path in life. So I think if you're in high school and you don't have that high of a GPA, that's why it would be really good to go to community college, right? Because it's like a fresh beginning. No one knows you. Your high school teachers aren't there. And so it really allows you to like really prove yourself that, okay, I am determined and I can do this. There are tons of people who weren't A students in high school who went on to do really amazing things in life. And there are people who are A students in high school who the vice versa can apply to them as well. Every day is a fresh start. And you get to figure out what that beginning looks for you. And it's never, ever over, okay? If you are like, you had bad grades in college and you decide, oh, I want to go to med school, I want to do something hard, it's also not over. There's post-bac programs. You can try to get like a master's. Some people even go, this is a harder option, but people go back and do like a second bachelor's degree, right? So there are different options just so you can prove yourself, because people also realize that the person you were 4 years ago isn't the same person you were. Man, the person I was 2 years ago when COVID started is not the same person I am today. The person I was probably even last year is not the same person I am today. You know, so we evolve and we change. And so I think that schools and programs understand that sometimes people have life events or just an epiphany. You wake up one day and you're like, oh, I want to do this, and you make it happen. So thank God for the World Wide Web. You can Google things. You can look up. There's all these chats. I'm now blank. Is it Reddit? Reddit. Yeah, my sister loves Reddit. You go to Reddit, and it's like all these answer and question things that you can go and look and see how people do stuff and figure it out. And you can ask people. Never be ashamed. Never be shy to really ask people whatever questions you have, because chances are somebody has been in the exact same shoes and can help you figure it out.
I love it. Someone said going above and beyond can really help you gain favor. Yes. And then another question is, what would you say are the best methods to apply when it comes to developing great study habits?
Okay. Wow. Y'all are asking some really good questions. Okay. So
I guess, sorry, on that note, I think we can do 2 questions in one. Someone also asked when to do or when to take the MCAT exams, since we're talking about studying.
Okay, sounds good. So study habits. Discipline. Anything you want to do in life is about discipline. And sometimes it's not even the big things, it's about just doing the same thing over and over and over again. Like people who are Olympians, I don't think it's because they're like the best runners per se, but they probably, like Steph Curry, he practices how many free throw shots he says every single day, something ridiculous, you know? So it's all about repetition and repetition and repetition and repetition. So setting a study schedule is really important, and sticking to it. Because I know there's certain, I remember, oh man, when I was studying for my MCAT, my mom was like, oh, go pick up your brother, go do this. I'm like, Mom, how do you want me to pass if you keep asking me to do all these things? But you just have to be disciplined, figuring out where you study the best. For me, I have to be in the library. I have to be in a quiet area because I'm easily distracted. Some people like to study with music on, whatever it may be. Figure out where you can best study and being honest with yourself about that. Like if you know you can't put on the TV and really study properly, so stop blinding yourself and turn off the TV and do the work that you need to do. And then one of the things I learned too about test taking is that it's not just about what you know, it's we're just trying to figure it out. So like in college, talk to the people above you. Hey, what's the exam like? And if it's legal, like certain times it's legal for you to get your hands on the old exams, get your hands on the old exams. If it's illegal, please don't do it. It's not worth it. You never want to be the person who gets like dinged for plagiarism. There are a few things that's very hard to overcome. Cheating and plagiarism, those are one of them. Don't even try to do it. It's not worth it. But if you can get your hands on the old exams, because then you can figure out exactly what the professor's going to ask you, you know? And so you can kind of tailor your studying to that and know your studying style. Like me, I love flashcards. Like I always, like flashcards are my friends. And then know who you are as time goes along. Like I figured I don't like to read a lot. I really don't. It's not my strong suit. So all I even going to class, when I was in med school, I didn't go to class because I realized I can't focus in class. So I'd waited after class, I'll listen to the lecture in double speed, which forces me to hyper focus on what is being said. And I have to be by myself so I'm not distracted. I take notes, I make flashcards, and I go over the previous exam questions. I stick to that method. Like once you find a method that works for you, stick to it like glue. Do not waver, because your friends are going to be like, oh yeah, I read this book and I did this and I did that. Do not, once you figure out how you study, don't change, don't do anything. I took my board exam, and that's the thing about learning, it never ends. I was studying for my board exams last year. I literally got my hands on all the old questions. And that's all I did. And all the stuff that came back over and over again, I was like, okay, these are the important things. And I just like put them in a flashcard and just memorized it, right? My other colleagues were like, oh, they're doing this. They're going to this, the weekend schedule session thing. They're listening to videos. And for 1 second, I was like, oh, let me do the videos. And I said, you are you. That's a very important thing. Know who you are. This is how I study. That may work for Jane, but it doesn't work for FATMATTA. So stick to what FATMATTA knows works for FATMATTA and don't mess the formula up. And then the other thing too is just working on your test taking skills, right? Because test taking is not about what you know, it's about how you take the test, okay? So early on, start just practicing taking tests. A lot of times, like I think Caucasian people outperform us, not because they're smarter than us, but they know how to take the test better than us. One of the things I've learned is timing of the test. Move really quick. Like when I studied for my boards recently, I made sure I finished with at least 15 minutes to go. I really pressurized myself to read the question and select an answer and move on. If I don't know the answer, I'm selecting a C and I'm moving on. Because a lot of times we sit there, we waste time. Oh, I don't know this answer. And then the anxiety builds up. Then now you missed all the last 10 questions that you knew because you're hyper vigilant about this one question, and no way you cut it or dice it. You're not going to get the right answer. You don't know what the answer is. So that's one of the things I learned. Don't waste your time. What you know and know what you know well. Don't worry about what you don't know, because you're not going to know everything, right? So you just go in the test, you also go in the mindset to know that I'm not going to know everything. So that when you don't know a couple of answers in a row, you don't become anxious and it doesn't throw you off. You know, I always go in and I'm like, okay, I know I don't know everything and I'm fine with it. And if I don't know the answer, if I'm between two answers, I'm choosing one and I'm moving on. If I don't know, I'm choosing a C and I'm moving on. And I only change 2 questions per question block, because most of the time people change their answers from the right answer to the wrong answer. So don't second guess yourself either. And that's why moving quickly on the test really matters. And you only really change a question if maybe you misread the question. Like you go back and you're like, oh, I totally misread it, you know, but you don't want to lose points on something you would know in the end because you're focused on something in the front. So also test taking skills are things that really changed my life. For a long time, there was a time I had a lot of test taking anxiety. And once I figured out these skills, changed my life. I'm the person who finishes a test really early and I can be super confident. And plus I prayed, I did my work. I usually go for a run before a test to take the edge off. You know, I prayed about it. I worked hard. And then when I go there, I can just and take the test and keep it pushing, you know, and don't really have to worry about it. MCAT exams, I am so sorry. I'm so out of the game that I am not the person for the MCAT exams. So the general answer to that, you usually take it depending on when you want to go. So you take it the year before when you want to go to med school. The MCATs are completely different than when I took it. I took the MCAT in 2008, if you do the math. So it's been a long time. So I honestly don't know the specifics of that.
Someone asked, how long is the internship? I'm assuming they're referring to the research assistant position.
I mean, that depends. Like you can do that in, so you do that in, you do that in college, right? You get paid internship, or you can do a summer internship. I don't know if you're asking for internship, because in medicine too, when you're done with medical school, you go to residency, but your first year of residency is called internship. And depending on what you go into, it looks a little bit different, but that can, I don't know if that is what they meant. So I'm going to answer all the questions there.
Rafika, you have a question?
Yeah, pertaining to like, what was I gonna say? Like let's say chemistry and like microbiology, do you still need that information now, or was it just a basis? Like I don't understand why doctors learn. Like, I mean, I understand learning chemistry and microbiology, but like I don't think they need it. Do they need it now as they are doctors? What's the use of that information? But like
you
just
do need it. Right? No, you do. Because like,
oh, sorry.
For example, microbiology, I use microbiology every day, right? So let me talk about one thing I see all the time in the hospital, is osteomyelitis, right? It's an infection all the way down to the bone, right? So we work with the orthopedic surgeons and we get a biopsy, or the podiatrist, and then we send that for culture, right? Based on what the culture starts growing, that's all microbiology, you know, GPCs, gram-positive cocci pairs, the basic, like going back to the basics of microbiology. Before I even know what's growing, if I see that, I know I'm treating staph, and I can start targeting my antibiotic treatment to that. I don't even have to wait for them to tell me the species, because I know something like vancomycin can cover that. I know clindamycin can cover that, right? So I'm going to start with my big guns and be broad, right? To start treating that until I can be more specific as to what I'm treating. Or even if somebody comes to me with a urinary tract infection, right? And I do a urine culture, I need to be able to read what that's basic microbiology. The same thing. It's like, okay, what organism is growing? What antibiotic covers that organism, right? To be able to treat it, because I can throw something there, but it may not work, you know? So sometimes, is every single thing you learn in medical school pertain to you? Probably no, not every single thing. And it also depends on what specialty you go into. People who do dermatology, they do a specific niche of medicine. I'm definitely in a different boat because I do family medicine. So I do a little bit more broad spectrum medicine. But no, trust me, I think about that. Even the physiology, I think of physiology every day. I mean, like when I admit patients to the hospital and I look at like their electrolytes, like their sodium, their potassium, and like trying to figure out, okay, how do I replace the water they lost, but without doing it too fast so their brain doesn't swell, and figuring out that balance of it all. That's all just from like the basics of the sciences. So, and then anatomy, man, I use anatomy every day. So yeah, so not every single thing, obviously, and it depends on what you go into, but it's definitely useful.
Awesome. Any other questions from anyone? I don't see any more in the chat, but feel free to unmute if you have any more questions. Dr. FATMATTA, any other, Lafika, you have something to add? I see that you unmuted yourself.
Yeah. Pertaining to like healthcare, like I do geography. Like, so I'm interested like in like systems. Like I was looking at for like we need to do an extended essay for a class. So like I was looking at like, what is that thing called? Healthcare inequalities, like how and disparities. Like that's just one of the topics that I'm looking at of choosing. So like pertaining to like the healthcare system as a whole, what could you say about like inequalities, disparities, and not just that, but like pertaining to race as well, pertaining to race specifically, I'm looking at race disparities, the qualities and sicknesses between different races and stuff like that. So what could you say?
Wow. Yeah, I can talk about that all day. So first of all, like I get excited being a Black, relatively young doctor, female doctor at that. And I love working at Howard, man. You know, my whole life, I was at all these white places, you know, like where I was the minority, where I felt like I had to prove stuff to people, you know, like when I was in med school, not one time, multiple times, I walked in the room with my white coat and these old white ladies were handing me over their trays because, oh, you're here to pick up my food. I'm like, man, what food services person in this hospital do you see wear a white coat with a stethoscope around their neck? Like, no, that's, you know? So with disparities from that standpoint, definitely, like being a Black female doctor, first of all, I don't look like what people think a doctor is supposed to look like. I guess there's a way a doctor is supposed to look like. I don't know what that is. I guess an old white man, but only 2% of doctors are Black females. So I make a very small minority. And so definitely during training, a lot of interesting, I got called the N-word by a demented patient, and the daughter was like very, she was so embarrassed. But I mean, but you know, that's just life. It's just, I mean, I am at the point, I'm happy for what's happening for race relations in America and where it's going. But I think if I'm going to hold on to every single time I'm discriminated, I'm going to be a very sad person, an angry person. So I just feel bad for those people. I just take pity on them because I'm like, oh, it's so sad that you're so small-minded, but it is what it is and life moves on. So you're definitely going to face that stuff. You're going to face people question, you know, how many times, and then these older white doctors are like, oh, where are you from? What do your parents do? You know, there are these questions they try to ask you to find, like they polish it to look very nice, but they're trying to get somewhere, you know? Which is always very, I mean, I figured it out from very early on. And so there's that aspect. And then there's an aspect of like treating patients and talking about disparities among patients, you know? Obviously we know that in the hospitals, people are much likely to give pain meds to white patients and Black patients, you know? We wanna talk about the opioid epidemic. It's not just people over treating, but it's also people under treating Black people, and then them having to look out to the streets to buy medicine for their pain. I recently had a quote unquote difficult patient that one of my residents was telling me about. And so they basically didn't really do a full workup on the patient because they're like, oh, the patient's, you know, a homeless patient and being difficult. I'm like, first of all, don't even start your conversation with me about the patient being homeless. Like, just tell me about what's happening. Because a lot of times I also have to watch my biases, right? It's like, oh, this patient's homeless. And so, no, if this patient wasn't homeless, how would I treat this patient? You know? And really putting myself in check, you know, to say, okay, I need to give this patient the best care possible. Because even though the patient's homeless, this is someone's dad, you know, like this is someone's brother, this is someone's uncle, you know. So definitely you have to check yourself on a regular basis, or if people have certain diagnoses, like AIDS, for example, right? Or like people act a little funny towards them. And so just making sure you really check yourselves, check your biases when you're talking to patients. And that's why I love working at Howard, because there's a bunch of, I mean, it's different now because I work at Howard, because there's a bunch of, you know, Black doctors, and most people are in line with the mission of Howard. But most people are in line with the mission of Howard. But sorry, my sister keeps calling me. I apologize. Most people are in line with the mission of Howard. But I do remember, like when I was in med school, well, even I did my PEDS training at University of North Carolina, in Chapel Hill, and really I dealt with a lot more biases there. And also even being able to speak up for patients who may be too shy to speak up for themselves. But I still can't remember, I still can't forget when I was in North Carolina, this lady was like, "You're the first Black doctor that's ever taken care of my child." I was like, what? Or she said, I was like, the first Black person ever taken care of either her child, or anyone in her family. And I was like, that is wild. That is crazy. Like, that is just crazy. And for me, it brings joy. It makes me happy to know, you know, we live in DC, and it's easy. There's a lot of professionals in DC, but in a lot of other places, like, it's like Black people tend to have very menial jobs because unfortunately they don't have the access to upward mobility, really, you know? So like in a lot of places, like seeing a Black person like me who's a doctor is a big deal, you know? And so it's also really humbling to know that, like, you know, God has given me this opportunity. And so also, and I feel like in turn, which is why I'm like, I put my number out there, hit me up. Because in turn, because I always think about that, okay, so God has given me this opportunity to be here. Is it just for me to be here? Like, it can't just be for me to be here. It's for me to also help other people even get better than me. Like, I want people to be better than I am, you know, not just even to get to where I am. And so for that, that's really, really important to me, which is why I put my number in the group chat. Hit me up, text me, because if you call me, I probably won't answer your call, but text me and say who you are, and I will text you back.
Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Any other final questions from anyone? Final questions. If you have a question, go ahead and unmute really quickly or type in the chat really quickly. All right. If not, Dr. FATMATTA, please give us one final word of wisdom for everyone. There's a wide range of us here, from middle school students to high school to some college students. So for all of us here, oh, there's one more question that someone got sneak in. How long did you go through medical school, I guess?
Well, what's the question? Can the person?
I was asking.
How long did you do in? How long did you do? Oh, medical school is 4 years. Undergrad 4 years, medical school 4 years. I took 5 years to complete medical school, but because I went and I did an MPH for 1 year, a Master of Public Health for 1 year, and I came back. So my word of wisdom, since it's a vast people, know yourself and stay true to yourself. You know, even as an adult, I struggle with this because, you know, everyone wants to fit in. Everybody wants to like be like everyone else. But as I've gotten older, I realize I'm not anybody else. I'm me. And I have to own who I am, right? So it's really important to define who you are. And it may change with time. Define who you are and be true to who you are. And that means that you may not be friends with everyone, and that's fine. Like, some people are not going to like you for it. And not everyone has to like you. I always tell people, as long as I'm good with God, I'm good. You don't have to like me, you know? So know yourself, figure out who your identity is, who your identity in Christ is, and stick to it. And don't be like this wishy-washy person that allows people to let you do this and then people let you do. Because when you do that, all you do is you're just more confused. And then you have a lot of regret. You're sometimes like, why did I even do that? Like, I didn't even like to do that. Like, why did I just do that? That makes no sense whatsoever. You're doing it to like please somebody or whatever. And who knows, even in 2 or 3 months, or even in 5 months, that person may never be in your life ever, ever, ever again. So know thyself, stay true to thyself. And then the other thing is, there is nothing in the world that really ends the world. Sometimes there's something that happened to me in college, man, that I literally thought was the end of the world for me. And I look back now and it's not. But sometimes when you're like in a situation, it may seem like it's the end of the world. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing that is so bad that's the end of the world for you. Just remind you, sometimes the devil plays with your mind. Like, oh, how would you ever do this again? Or tries to embarrass you, tries to guilt trip you. And especially when the devil is ready to work on you, he does that to isolate you from other people. Don't fall in that trap. Never, ever, ever fall in that trap. Have someone, either your pastor, your mom, your aunt, somebody that you can always call or talk to or confide in. But the other wisdom I'm going to leave is never over. Nothing is ever impossible. Nothing is ever the end of the world. Nothing means that you can never do what you want to do again. There are possibilities, there are ways, and there's also grace. And grace allows us to be able to keep going, and to, even when we mess up, for life to continue.
Can we just unmute, please, and say thank you to Dr. FATMATTA? Thank you in the chat. Thank you out loud. Thank you through
Doctor.
emojis.
Thank you.
Thank
God
you.
bless you. Thank you for allowing the Lord to use you to just invest in all of us as young people. I hope you guys were taking notes. A lot of gems were shared. So we really, really appreciate you. Thank you so much. So a lot of gems were shared, like I said, but we want to make sure that we solidify all of that with prayer. So we're going to pray